Welcome, friends. Tonight we're starting, this is A Course in Miracles, Palm Beach Study Group. And tonight we're starting chapter 15, The Holy Instant, with section 1, The Two Uses of Time. In the book, it's on page 301 in the text. Can you imagine what it means to have no cares, no worries, no anxieties, but merely to be perfectly calm and quiet all the time? Yet that is what time is for, to learn just that and nothing more. God's teacher cannot be satisfied with his teaching until it constitutes all your learning. He has not fulfilled his teaching function until you have become such a consistent learner that you may learn only of him. When this has happened, you will no longer need a teacher, nor time in which to learn. And of course, the teacher is being referred to is the Holy Spirit. And so this is really needs no interpretation. It clearly says it. There's only one function, to learn only of him and forsake all of your ego teachings. And if we do that, we'll come to a place where we have no cares, no worries, no anxieties, but are perfectly calm and quiet all of the time. And then we'll be out of time because there won't be time anymore. There's no time in the spirit. Paragraph 2. One source of perceived discouragement from which you may suffer is your belief that this takes time and that the results of the Holy Spirit's teaching are far in the future. This is not so. For the Holy Spirit uses time in his own way and is not bound by it. Time is his friend in teaching. It does not waste him as it does you. And all the waste that time seems to bring with it is due but to your identification with the ego, which uses time to support its belief in destruction. The ego, like the Holy Spirit, uses time to convince you of the inevitability of the goal and end of teaching. To the ego, the goal is death, which is its end. But to the Holy Spirit, the goal is life, which has no end. Paragraph 3. The ego is an ally of time, but not a friend. For it is as mistrustful of death as it is of life. And what it wants for you, it cannot tolerate. The ego wants you dead, but not itself. The outcome of its strange religion must therefore be the conviction that it can pursue you beyond the grave. And out of its unwillingness for you to find peace, even in death, it offers you immortality and hell. It speaks to you of heaven, but assures you that heaven is not for you. How can the guilty hope for heaven? This is indicating that the ego thinks of itself as a separate personality. In reality, we created the ego, and there is no ego except for what we hold in our minds. If we let go of the ego in our own minds, then the ego doesn't exist. It's a construct in our own minds that we created for ourselves. And we've been told many times in the past by the Course that the ego is insane. And these couple of paragraphs here clearly show the insane nature of the ego. Are there any questions, comments? Paragraph 4. The belief in hell is inescapable to those who identify with the ego. Their nightmare and their fear are all associated with it. The ego teaches that hell is in the future, for this is what all its teaching is directed to. Hell is its goal. For although the ego aims at death and dissolution as an end, it does not believe it. The goal of death, which it craves for you, leaves it unsatisfied. No one who follows the ego's teaching is without the fear of death. Yet if death were thought of merely as an end to pain, would it be feared? We have seen this strange paradox in the ego's thought system before, but never so clearly as here. For the ego must seem to keep fear from you to hold your allegiance. Yet it must engender fear in order to maintain itself. Again, the ego tries, and all too frequently succeeds, in doing both, by using disassociation for holding its contradictory aims together so that they seem to be reconciled. The ego teaches thus: death is the end as far as hope of heaven goes. Yet because you and the ego cannot be separated, and because it cannot conceive of its own death, it will pursue you still, because guilt is eternal. Such is the ego's version of immortality. And it is this the ego's version of time supports. Any questions, comments? Yes, Ed.
The evangelicals believe in hell.
Okay.
And how do we deal with that? I mean, are they all ruled by their egos? I don't understand.
Well, my first comment is that doesn't matter. The only thing you need to be concerned about is yourself and what's happening in your mind. Everybody else has to find the answers for themselves within themselves, and everybody's on their own individual path. But all roads lead to God. And no matter how they identify, evangelical, atheist, Muslim, whatever, in the end of time, all will be one and in the spirit. So the only control you have is of yourself. And that needs to be your primary consideration.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm just wondering where this concept of hell came from in the beginning.
Well, ego, it came from ego in all of its different forms. Religions all around the world that have some form of hell.
The Bible?
Well, of course, in the Bible, there's lots of hell in the Bible.
Okay.
In the Old Testament, God is damning people all of the time. And even in the New Testament, there's struggles with the devil and the devils from the hell and what have you. I mean, there's all kinds of hellscapes and religions around the world. But it all comes from fear and guilt and ego, which is universal. There's nobody in the world who isn't, struggling with the ego, because we created the ego. So everybody has ego in their minds. The whole notion of the course is to teach you how to release the ego out of your mind so that you embrace only the spirit, which is also in everyone's mind. So no matter how bad anybody is, no matter what they do, they still have the Holy Spirit dwelling within them.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. We're on paragraph 5. The ego teaches that heaven is here and now because the future is hell. Even when it attacks so savagely that it tries to take the life of someone who thinks it is the only voice. Let me see that again. Even when it attacks so savagely that it tries to take the life of someone who thinks it is the only voice, that the ego is the only voice. It speaks of hell even to him, for it tells him hell is here and well, and bids him leap from hell into oblivion. The only time the ego allows anyone to look upon with equanimity is the past. And even there, its only value is that it is no more. Basically, that's just saying that, the ego is constantly perpetrating the guilt, the fear, the pain, and labeling it as hell or whatever other word you want to use for it. And that's what it does. It's just saying the same thing it's already said, but in a different way. Paragraph 6. How bleak and despairing is the ego's use of time, and how terrifying, for underneath its fanatical insistence that the past and future be the same is hidden a far more insidious threat to peace. The ego does not advertise its final threat, for it would have its worshippers still believe that it can offer them escape. But the belief in guilt must lead to the belief in hell, and always does. The only way in which the ego allows the fear of hell to be experienced is to bring hell here, but always as a foretaste of the future. For no one who considers himself as deserving of hell can believe that punishment will end in peace. And so that's why the ego brings fear and pain. It's a foreshadowing of the future of hell. And Holy Spirit brings peace and calm and quiet and love and forgiveness. And the whole key to the whole thing here is the guilt. We must forgive and release the guilt. And that's the mechanism by which we can rid ourselves of the ego mind. Any questions, comments? Paragraph 7. The Holy Spirit teaches thus: there is no hell. Hell is only what the ego has made of the present. The belief in hell is what prevents you from understanding the present, because you are afraid of it. The Holy Spirit leads as steadily to heaven as the ego drives to hell. For the Holy Spirit, who knows only the present, uses it to undo the fear by which the ego would make the present useless. There is no escape from fear in the ego's use of time. For time, according to its teaching, is nothing but a teaching device for compounding guilt until it becomes all-encompassing, demanding vengeance forever. So the Holy Spirit teaches there is no hell, and the ego teaches that we are in hell and we always will be in hell. And of course, lots of people, through their religion, believe that they can be saved and that they're going to go to heaven. But all of those people, when it comes time for them to die, are afraid that they're going to go to hell. And it's like, if you're at the point of death and you're not afraid you're going to go to hell, then you have reached the point where you've largely, rid yourself of the ego in your mind and have embraced the Holy Spirit and have embraced the heaven within yourself. And then you're not afraid and you're not feeling guilty. and you're already in peace. And that's the way everyone should die. That's the goal, is to die happy, knowing you're already in heaven. Hell does not exist. The Holy Spirit teaches thus: there is no hell. Any questions, comments? Paragraph 8. The Holy Spirit would undo all of this now. Fear is not of the present, but only of the past and future, which do not exist. There is no fear in the present when each instant stands clear and separated from the past, without its shadow reaching out into the future. Each instant is a clean, untarnished birth, in which the Son of God emerges from the past into the present, and the present extends forever. It is so beautiful and so clean and free of guilt that nothing but happiness is there. No darkness is remembered, and immortality and joy are now. And that's the goal that we have. That's the place that we must reach in our mind, is as described in paragraph 8. And then paragraph 9 says, this lesson takes no time. For what is time without a past and future? It has taken time to misguide you so completely, but it takes no time at all to be what you are. Begin to practice the Holy Spirit's use of time as a teaching aid to happiness and peace. Take this very instant, now, and think of it as all there is of time. Nothing can reach you here out of the past, and it is here that you are completely absolved, completely free, and wholly without condemnation. From this holy instant, wherein holiness was born again, you will go forth in time without fear and with no sense of change with time. So that's, if you remember Baba Ram Dass, be here now. Don't be in the past, don't be in the future, just be here now. The yogis have been teaching this for centuries. And Jesus taught it too, but it's not so clear in the Bible verses that have come down to us, but there's hints of it. Take this very instant now and think of it as all there is of time. Again, this is a mental process. This whole course is aimed at readjusting your thinking. As you think, so are you, so do you be. And we have to adjust our thinking in order to get us out of ego and into spirit. Paragraph 10. Time is inconceivable without change, yet holiness does not change. Learn from this instant more than merely that hell does not exist. In this redeeming instant lies heaven, and heaven will not change. For the birth into the holy present is salvation from change. Change is an illusion taught by those who cannot see themselves as guiltless. There is no change in heaven because there is no change in God. In the holy instant in which you see yourself as bright with freedom, you will remember God, for remembering Him is to remember freedom. Again, this being in the now is the holy instant, and there is no time, and there is no fear or hell or pain. There's only God, there's only heaven, and God is changeless. Comments, questions? Number 11. If you are tempted to be dispirited by thinking how long it would take to change your mind so completely, ask yourself, how long is an instant? Could you not give so short a time to the Holy Spirit for your salvation? He asks no more, for he has no need of more. It takes far longer to teach you to be willing to give him this than for him to use this tiny instant to offer you the whole of heaven. In exchange for this instant, he stands ready to give you the remembrance of eternity. And the key word here is remembrance, because the Course teaches us that we're created spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings. We just forgot that we were spiritual beings. And if we would only remember that we were spiritual beings, we would be instantly out of hell and into heaven, out of ego and into spirit. So it's a question of remembering. It's like you don't need to learn how to for the first time. No, you need to learn how to forget what was past, what is ego, so that you can remember that you're an eternal being of spirit, that you never left heaven. Number 12. You will never give this holy instant to the Holy Spirit on behalf of your release, while you are unwilling to give it to your brothers on behalf of theirs. For the instant of holiness is shared and cannot be yours alone. Remember then, when you are tempted to attack a brother, that this instant of release is yours. Miracles are the instants of release you offer and will receive. They attest to your willingness to be released and to offer time to the Holy Spirit for his use of it. So this does bring another dimension to the story. First of all, that we need to be willing. We have free will. Spirit is not going to impose itself upon us. We have to say, God's will is mine, my will is God's. Secondly, we have to understand that there's only one of us. That in order for the holy instant to be realized, for the miracle to be realized, that we have to not only think of ourselves that way, but we have to think of and see everybody else without exception as a spiritual being, just as we are. The instant of holiness is shared and cannot be yours alone. Remember then, when you are tempted to attack a brother, that his instant of release is yours. The only way we can receive the miracle is to give the miracle. Any comments, questions? Paragraph 13. How long is an instant? It is as short for your brother as it is for you. Practice giving this blessing instead of freedom. Practice giving this blessed instant of freedom to all who are enslaved by time, and thus make time their friend for them. The Holy Spirit gives their blessed instant to you through your giving of it. As you give it, he offers it to you. Be not willing to give what you would receive of him, for you join with him in giving. I'm sorry, I'll read that again. Be not unwilling to give what you would receive of him, for you join with him in giving. In the crystal cleanness of the release you give is your instantaneous escape from guilt. You must be holy if you offer holiness. Number 14. How long is an instant? As long as it takes to reestablish perfect sanity, perfect peace, and perfect love for everyone, for God, and for yourself. As long as it takes to remember immortality and your immortal creations who share it with you. As long as it takes to exchange heaven for hell for heaven. Long enough to transcend all of the ego's making and ascend unto your Father. Number 15. Time is your friend if you leave it to the Holy Spirit to use. He needs but very little to restore God's whole power to you. He who transcends time for you understands what time is for. Holiness lies not in time, but in eternity. There never was an instant in which God's Son could lose his purity. His changeless state is beyond time, for his purity remains forever, beyond attack, and without variability. Time stands still in his holiness and changes not. And so it is no longer time at all. For caught in the single instant of the eternal sanctity of God's creation, it is transformed into forever. Give the eternal instant, that eternity may be remembered for you in that shining instant of perfect release. Offer the miracle of the holy instant through the Holy Spirit and leave his giving it to you, to him. So in this paragraph, when it says God's Son, they're talking about you. Paragraph 5. There never was an instant in which you could lose your purity. God's changeless state is beyond time. For his purity remains forever beyond attack and without variability. Time stands still in his holiness and changes not. And then it is no longer time at all. So practice this in your own mind, thinking of every moment as the now, not dwelling in the past, not thinking of the future, just being here now and accepting yourself as an eternal spiritual being, and look at everyone else that you see as an eternal spiritual being in the now. And that's how to do it. Comments, questions? Ed?
What about the concept of learn from your mistakes? Is that going back in time, or are we talking about immediate response to immediate mistakes?
Yes, we do grow and learn from our mistakes, hopefully. And, that is part of the process. And the biggest mistake that we've made is listening to the ego. The biggest mistakes we've made are being angry and upset. The biggest mistakes we've made are thinking of others as less than ourselves. There's the biggest. So yes, we are supposed to learn from our mistakes, and everything we're learning in this course is pointing out ego mistakes that we have made, and we're learning how to change our mind so that we don't make them anymore, so that we can evolve out of the ego thinking into spirit thinking. So,
Okay. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for joining us Friends, we have reached the end of our section for today. Let's have a moment of silence.